Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Daniel Keith Austin, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on here.
Let's jump into the first question that I like to ask my guests, and that is, what were the values and beliefs that you were raised with growing up that contributed to you becoming who you are today?
Well, do you want me to talk about that religiously, politically, or?
Wherever you want to take it, what were the values and beliefs that influenced your upbringing?
Well, at my very core, I've always wanted to be a good person. Like, I want to be like the embodiment of a good person. That's always what I want to shoot for. I want to treat people well. I want to um, treat them the way I want to be treated. I want to help people. I want to do things for the good of mankind. I want to help protect the innocent and help people live better lives. Um, I was raised in a Christian family, and a lot of our Christian beliefs at the time did contribute to that. Um, and it's just something I've always held on to. Anything evil, anything despicable, or that's always been abhorrent to me. And the last thing I want to do is let that be a part of me in any way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Talk a little bit more about, because this is central to your story, um, how that played into, like, how what happened in your upbringing that created the situations that you've had to manage through.
Well, I am one of 4 autistic siblings, and I was raised for the first 16 or 17 years of my life to believe that it was genetic. We were born that way. Um, and a major breaking point came from when my youngest brother, who was the most severe out of all 4 of us, the brother who cannot talk and injures himself on a daily basis by biting his arm, he was given a vaccine where his behavior completely fell apart. Before I get into that, I just want to say for the record that his doctor told mom he needed it for school, that he was past all developmental stages, and that it was totally mercury free, thimerosal free, because mom had been researching vaccines, I think during the early 2000s, and was starting to realize and come to a conclusion that vaccinating us was not the best, was not a good idea, is not what she should have done. So anyway, she caved against her better instincts. She had also had my younger sister the year before, and wanted to wait on vaccines. And up to that point, she'd seen no signs of autism in my younger sister. So when my brother was given that vaccine, his behavior completely fell apart. He had seizures for the first time ever. He'd never had seizures before that vaccine. He began attacking other members of our family, including her, because she was also pregnant with my youngest brother from her second marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so bad that he had to be placed in a residential home as a minor. He was only 14 at the time.
Uh-huh. And so, coming back to your story, how were you raised when you were, what were some of the struggles that you encountered as you were growing up?
Well, one way you could sum it up in basically one sentence, my mindset: I knew what I was autistic, but I didn't know I was autistic.
Like you knew something, you were different, but there wasn't a label for it. Is that what you're saying?
I knew that people were calling me autistic, but I didn't know that meant I was different from everybody else.
Okay. Okay. And did you feel like you were different?
Well, I didn't feel like I was different, but I did know that I was being placed in, um, that I was being treated differently by my teachers, and I being placed under different circumstances that no other child was, and that no other student in my class was being um, put under. But also, as a child, I didn't question anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't know if that was part of the autism or also partly because I was sheltered. We were sheltered.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then how did you find out like that you were autistic, and how did you process that information?
Well, really, I was I knew that I was saying things and doing things that other kids considered weird, and uh, it was hard. It was hard for me to form the type of relationships I've seen the other kids make.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not to say I never made any friendships. I actually made some really strong ones during the last 3 years of my elementary school years, but I had to start right over because I was moved to a different middle school than all the kids in my class, and that opened up another can of worms in regards to my autism, how my mind worked, how I perceive things, and I knew that I wanted to date, I wanted to go out with girls, and that just wasn't happening. Even though I was told all the time that I was very handsome, very good looking.
That must have been so difficult to have to start making new friends, especially at that age, whether you're um, autistic or not. That middle school age is so difficult.
It is,
Yeah.
and yeah, and when reaching high school, I mean, it did, and it also didn't really get much better. Um, because I also struggled in the the interest fields I wanted to pursue. Like, okay, so I was in choir starting in 5th grade, and everyone told me I was a good singer. I had the time of my life in choir when I was in 7th grade, and especially in 8th grade. And then when I reached high school, I was struggling to get past a certain point in choir, and um, I realized, I mean, okay, I do have potential, but I need training to bring that potential out. And certain circumstances at home were not letting me.
Mm, okay.
And the same went for theater and acting because being a performer is something I am very interested in. I want to invest my time in being the best performer I can be.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you had told me in our first conversation that you were very passionate about writing and performing, but that you were also a disruptive kid.
Yeah,
What was that because you felt like you didn't fit in, because you felt like you weren't getting the opportunities that you wanted? What do you think?
that was mostly in my younger grade school years, and
Oh,
it was
okay.
really just because I didn't know how to act. As a
Mhm.
up until 2nd grade, I was in special ed classes, and then I started to get moved into um, regular classrooms with normal kids, and I think it was at that point they realized I needed a para, but the school I was at when I went into second grade, I guess they didn't have Paris, which is why I guess they transferred me to another school. I really didn't like that.
Mm.
I grew to really love the kids I was going to classes with. I grew to love my teachers, but then you move me into a different environment, and I, as a kid who didn't know any better, I wasn't going to take that well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
You had told me
so
too. Go ahead.
I feel like the adults in my life didn't really seem to wrap their minds around how much, as a kid, I just really didn't like change.
Mm-hmm.
Because once I started going to a different school after that school, then things started to get better. And when I actually went for 3 years straight to that school, I mean, I feel like things were fine for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And then starting me over again in seventh grade.
Yeah. How did you how did you learn how to adjust? Because you had said that you at some point had trouble differentiating between fantasy and reality, and and having to manage through all of this change. Were you given any tools or any kind of pathway to help you, or did you just have to figure it out on your own?
I'm trying to remember. I mean, for the most part, that part of my childhood is kind of a blur to me. I don't really
Mhm.
remember being given tools to like help. I think they just wanted me to cooperate and listen in class.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
it was through watching home movies at a certain point when I was in eighth or ninth grade, and I saw how different I was, and then I wanted to veer away from that.
I was just going to ask you that. So once you found out and you had this realization, what did you do differently?
Um, Honestly, I was just trying to watch the things I said. Easier said than done, because I didn't always think like a normal person did.
Mhm.
And I was also still around certain members of my family who were also autistic, and that didn't always help.
Mhm. Mhm. It's interesting to me because it sounds like you were trying to make yourself be more mainstream, different than who you were, but who you are has its own merits.
Mm-hmm.
And how have you and or have you come to accept who you are and the beauty of who you are without having to try to be somebody that you're not, somebody different?
Well, I've never believed I was trying to be someone I'm not. I'm
Okay.
trying to be a better version of myself,
Okay.
and being a better version of myself includes healing myself and um, and learning how to better relate to people. I plan to um, go even further with healing myself by changing my diet at a certain point when I can afford it. Because right now I'm just living on um, what I can afford at the time. But once things kick off for me, then I'll have the time and the energy to start actually making those changes in my life that are going to be pretty drastic for me.
Mhm. Okay. What do you want to share what those are?
Um, Not at this point, because I still don't know what all I'm going to do, and certain things are not really looked upon with neutral or unbiased points of view
Mhm.
yet.
Mhm. Okay. Um well, since you brought up the some of the changes that you anticipate making, and to me that is the perfect segue into talking about I mentioned earlier that you had said you were passionate about writing and
Yes,
performing, and you have written a book and you're writing more.
yes, that is correct.
Share some about that. And how
Okay,
did you come to find this topic as your writing subject?
okay. Well, I've also always been an animal lover. I and I'm I'm a dog lover. I'm a cat lover. I like lions, elephants. I'm really big into nature and wildlife. And one of my passions was working with dogs and wanting to learn how to train dogs and raise them as pets.
Mm-hmm.
And when and in my early childhood, we had the best dog I ever had, and she was a golden retriever, and her name was Chelsea. She only lived for 3 years. We only had her for that long.
Mm. Wow, not very long.
No, but I never forgot those 3 years I had with her, and I knew I wanted to write. I knew I wanted to tell stories. When I was working in a doggy daycare in my mid 20s, I stumbled across the idea of writing about dogs going to doggy daycare and having a golden retriever puppy named Chelsea be the main character. So I wrote the first story in which she goes to doggy daycare. Spoiler alert, that's going to be book number 5.
Okay.
So, um, so then I realized she needed a beginning story, so I wrote that beginning story. And it was through writing that beginning story that I thought, you know what? This is not a bunch of one offs. This is going to daycare is not all this dog is going to be doing in her stories like I initially thought. She's going to have a long, um, over arc kind of story. Like it's gonna be long, comprehensive. It's gonna be her life story. She'll be going to daycare in some of her stories, but that's not going to be the main focus of the entire series.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Chelsea's New Beginning is that beginning story for her, and it's the first book I have out right now that you can get on Amazon.
Okay, we will include a link to that in the show notes. Um, what else are you excited about working on?
Well, right now I have the next 2 books already illustrated. I am working on writing the next stories right now as this podcast is being aired. Um, I am raising funds for book number 2 to be released. And if you go to the link below that says danielkeithaustin.com/fundraiser, um, you will see a list of donation tiers in which we will give rewards to you based on how much on the specific amount that you donate.
Mm-hmm.
And we are trying to raise $11,000 just to get book number 2 out right now. There will be more. Um, there will be no more news coming out as more books and other events related to the book. As I see fit to announce and share with my audience. But right now, we are trying to get book number 2 out.
Okay, fantastic. What would you want people to know about your your story, not Chelsea's story, but your story, um, that would help them understand the journey that you've been on better?
So my journey has been, to put it nicely, a very frustrating journey, and at times very depressing. I was in despair and felt like I hit rock bottom quite a bit due to circumstances um, in which I was responsible for, but also there were factors outside of my control for a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, ultimately, I would just not stop working towards what you want.
Mm-hmm.
I personally will not stop working towards what I want, because the alternative, giving up, is much worse.
Is that what I was just going to say? So is that like what is the thing that pulled you out of that place of despair and helped you onto this path that you're on now, where you're like, I'm just going to keep going cuz this is where I'm going?
Yeah. I have the will to keep fighting. Um uh and the knowledge that things can always get better. If things can get better for other people, they can certainly get better for you.
Mm. Yes.
So, I mean, so why why accept what life seems to be telling you, that life is never going to get better for you? I mean, that's nonsense.
Mhm. Are there role models that you have looked to and followed to
Yes,
help you on that?
yes, two of them are my life coaches. Yeah.
Okay. How did you find them?
Um, I was I needed getting back to me wanting to go on dates and with girls starting in 6th or 7th grade. Um, there are people out there who help men who struggle with being friend zoned, and help with men who are struggling to get women interested in them become better versions of themselves. And
Right.
I mean, that's really what it is
Mhm.
all about. I mean, there are ways men can relate to women on a level in which women will find them attractive.
Mhm.
I mean, it's I mean,
Yeah. And so those people have become your life coaches and helped you pull you out of that place of despair is what you're saying.
yes, whether it's
Yeah.
through reading their newsletters and then ultimately communicating them and just working to be in a better spot to where they can actually help you. So
I want to mention, I want to pull out a key point here that you just mentioned, and that was that you were reading their newsletters. So even if listeners are listening and they're like, well, I can't afford to hire a coach to work with them like individually, there are other ways to use them as mentors, use them as coaches and guides, right? To follow their
yeah,
stuff on social media, you subscribe to their newsletter. There are other
yeah,
ways to, yeah, to employ them rather than necessarily having them as your individual personal coach.
yes, for me, yes, and that does help some people, and it does help me like gain a better perspective. But for me personally, I need a personal coach.
Mhm.
It's the way my mind works. I know that if because my circumstances are so unique,
Yeah.
and and the issues I'm having, um, I feel like can't really be solved just by reading newsletters.
Mhm.
I have to communicate with this person or someone in that field. I have to work with this person so that they see what is going on with me, and they can see a way out for me.
Mhm. Yeah. That's awesome. So, right. So, hiring, again, the point of hiring coaches because they can help you with the blind spots, the places that you can't see. And sometimes before you can afford that, there are still those free resources or lower cost resources. So it's a step by step. But yes, of course you're going to get better results when you go when you get the personalized attention. So coaches have been helpful to you. And uh, what what other things have you incorporated gratitude in any way,
Um,
like into your journey, into your path?
well, yeah. Well, one, I am a dog walker, part time as well, and one way, I have, one way I work with other people who have helped me is I think of something else I can do for them. Like
Mm,
I am, um, I am taking acting lessons from someone right now. Um, her prices were already pretty much a godsend for my budget in the first place, but she has help that with dogs that she needs sometimes, and one way we trade off, we help each other, is she gives me acting lessons, I help with the dogs.
mhm,
So that's
mhm.
been huge for me, and it's helped me get into my first show in 10 years, which was Beauty and the Beast, the Kaufman Center, a few weeks ago.
Oh, wow, congratulations. That sounds
Thanks.
awesome. Was it fun?
Yeah, it was a blast. It was a really great experience, and if I had it my way, I would have been in a lot more shows during those 10 years. But once again, circumstances outside of my control have forced me to put shows and performing and auditioning on the back burner, even though that's ultimately what's important to me, because taking lessons and auditioning for shows doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah. Yeah. What the first question I asked you was about the values that you were raised with. What would you say are your most important values today?
I will say that um, I am very my values are I'm sorry, we may have to cut here.
That's okay. It sounds like creativity and the freedom to explore your creativity might be one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and the freedom to follow your heart, to follow what brings you happiness.
Right. I just want you to ask that. I just want you to cut like this section here, and we'll you might ask this question again, because
Okay. Yeah. Have your values changed over the years from what they were when you were a child to what you value and what is important to you today?
yes, some values of mine that I will not name. Some beliefs I've had have certainly changed, but my core beliefs is life is precious. Um, you have a right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. You have um, you have you have the right to be treated how you have the right to be sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's all good. This is why we record and we don't do it live. So it's all good. Let me ask you a different question. What would you say, or what advice would you give to people who are struggling the way that you have in the past struggled? What advice would you give to them
I
now that
think I
you're
might have
past it?
already answered this one.
Okay.
All right.
Um, is there anything else that you want to share in this conversation that we haven't already covered?
Well, I just want to make sure I know that we covered my fundraiser page.
Mm-hmm.
Want to make sure that we cover where you can get Chelsea's New Beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to my author's website, danielkeithaustin.com, buy the book. There's some dashes in between the words, but it says buy the book.
Okay.
So, and yeah,
Before we go, I always like to ask my guests what the song that they listen to when they need an extra boost of energy is. Do you have a song that you enjoy?
yes, I enjoy a ton of songs. They are a lot of it is musical theater, but if I had to pick one, it would be Something's Coming from the movie version of West Side Story. Tony is my number one dream role in that, and that is what I want the most, really.
Mm-hmm. That's that's such a good song, and nobody has ever said that before. So kudos to you for picking a song that no one else has chosen. I love it. Yeah, so I can definitely see that on the horizon for you because you have the determination
Yeah,
and the drive to make that happen. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Daniel, on Fine is a 4-letter word. It was a pleasure talking with you.
thanks. It was a pleasure talking with you too. Thank you for having me on.
All right.